Right, take number 4. Okay, so I want to say hi, Dave, but that feels kind of weird, so I'm probably just going to leave it at that. We are reporting to you live, pre-recorded from my bedroom floor. This is my project, which I'm very excited about. I really love the way it turned out, and I think it is just so fierce. I've kind of got it organized. I should have planned this better. I've got it organized. The middle is all the comparisons I made between the two films, and then on the right side we have the 2018 version, and on the left side we have the 1954 version. We are talking about A Star is Born, which is such a phenomenal film. Not necessarily a phenomenal series. Sorry, Barbara Streisand, but you just do not do it for me. Let's find my little notes here. So overall, I mean, I think the great thing about A Star is Born is how flexible the narrative structure is. For the most part, it follows a pretty similar trajectory from the get-go. The first act is, that's the other film we did. The first act is typically him, you can't see me at all, great. Son of a bitch. The first act is typically the rise and fall of their relationship, Esther and Norman falling in love. He notices her and he starts to take her under her wing. The second act is her rise as a star, his fall as a star. And the third act, I think the catalyst for that would be the iconic Oscars and Grammy scene, I think it is in the 2018 version. Both of which are really phenomenal scenes, which I will get into later. But the third act is his downfall in that moment, and then his road to recovery, and then later his suicide. Sneezy baby, aren't ya? Right, so, yeah, okay, let's just start in the middle. Please don't throw up on my bed. All right, so, thought I had something written. I kind of wanted to talk about the narrative structure a little bit better. Okay, so the bone, the spine, the skeleton of the plot pretty much goes. I've got this written down, so this is going to sound incredibly scripted, but Esther Blodgett wants to break into show business. She meets Norman Maine, who is a famous entertainer. He is taken with her and wants to help launch her career. Meanwhile, he suffers from alcoholism, which threatens his career. They get married, her career takes off, and her name is changed, which is not how it goes in the 2018 version, I believe, which we'll get into. Her name is changed to Vicky Lester. Her fame eclipses his. She wins a major award, but he drunkenly ruins the evening. He goes to rehab, but it doesn't take, and he gets into more trouble. He overhears Esther consider quitting her career to focus on him. He can't stand this and commits suicide. Esther returns to the stage in honor of her husband, which, is pretty much how it goes in both versions. I haven't seen 37? 36, I think. The one with Janet Gaynor. I've never seen that one because it's not a musical, so I'm like, why would I care? However, both of these versions, I can say for sure, pretty much follow that exact plot. However, in 2018... Vicky, Esther's name is Allie Maine, which is kind of weird. And then Norman's name is Jackson something or other. I don't know. I don't love the story. I think it's great and I think it's interesting. I think it's poignant and important to talk about drug abuse and how the system of being a star is toxic. Especially in recent years, just in like the last 20, celebrities like Amy Winehouse, Mac Miller, Whitney Houston's daughter, so it's a very thematically important film. But I think my biggest problem with it is I don't always know what it's trying to say about suicide, which is kind of important to me, just as like a person. But I think other than that, it's, I really, really enjoyed both of these films. I gotta say 1954 though is like, you cannot put into Judy Garland. Oh, I love her. Okay. So let's get into what you're actually probably going to care about. So I've got comparisons for the middle. And like I said, on the side is the differences. I talked about, 5 different points. in the middle, and then on the right and the left, I did 3 of those, but they're different. I'm pretty sure they're not. Okay, well, they're not different, but regardless, that isn't really, whatever. So for the acting, I said that so these are my little blurbs, right? Should I give you the tour? Okay, so here it is. I love this so much. I tried to do like a little like a theater curtain moment with these pictures, and I think it turned out so cute, and I'm so happy with it. And so, I mean, I worked so hard on this, and I love it so much. This is the project that you give to your mom to put into storage so that you can look back at it in 20 years, and I just love it. So, the acting in both films, I said, was incredibly seamless. Christ. Gaga, Cooper, Garland, and Mason, that's James Mason who plays Norman, did a great job of disappearing into their roles. I thought Norman and Esther are both difficult roles to get right, especially in 1954, because just at a base level, you want your character to be likable, you want them to be relatable, and just the way that their characters, I don't know, it's just the way that they're written is so specific that I feel like going into 2018, people were trepidatious because they just, it'd been so long and all of that. So I thought in both cases they all did really great jobs. Yeah, so Norman is a character that has to be misguided but willing to do right, and conversely, Esther has to be so in love with him that she's more than ready to help. In either case, the respective actors did a great job of making the audience fall in love with their relationship, and it invests them into their struggles. Either film is acted incredibly and could be studied so infinitely, which I find to be just incredibly true. I think in both cases, Judy Garland famously lost the Oscar to I don't remember who. Oh, that's going to kill me. She lost it to someone for her performance, which is really, really heartbreaking because, I mean, it is just one of the, like, she acts the shit out of it. So let's get into it. I mean, I don't know if I wrote it down, but, I mean, like, the most iconic scene, aside from the Oscars, the Grammys moment, is in 1954 when Judy is confessing to her, I think it's Norman's manager, and she is just like, I want to help him, but he keeps failing, and I hate him for failing, and I hate myself for, yada, yada, yada. And it's so incredible, and it's so emotional and vulnerable, which is it's what you look for, in my opinion, in like a performance or an actor, just across the board. So I thought in both cases, they all did really great jobs. And especially with the vulnerability, I feel like in 2018, which we'll get to it, so that's fine. I thought the cinematography in either version has a cohesive way of telling its story visually, and I think that overall that makes for a more interesting film. Both use very explosive scenery that brings the world to life in a way unique from any other film. Being as the theme is stardom, I think both features do a great job of creating the world of the entertainment industry and don't shy away from showing off the behind the scenes of it. Although it happens parallel to the rest of the world, it seems as if our story takes place in a bubble, which is an interesting perspective on stardom. This picture right here is so important to me because that is the it's like 7 different. It's the Born in a Trunk melody, with Swanee and all of those iconic songs, and it is like 15 minutes of just like beautiful, gorgeous cinematography. This is in 1954, and I mean it is like words cannot describe the wonder that it is because it's so minimalistic in its portrayal of sort of the scene going around Judy. I should say Esther, but whatever, it's Judy. It's just incredible to watch. It's so vibrant with its colors, and to me is like one of the most beautifully, I mean, I guess it also goes hand in hand with directing. It's just one of the most beautifully shot sequences in any film ever, so I really, really love it for that. And the directing, I think both films have a strong sense of individuality despite being so closely related. This helped in a large part by its directing. In both films, the pacing is done very well. Both are long films, but move very quickly with not much filler needed to bridge the gap. And then that's a specific note about 2018. I mean, I completely, I mean, of course I agree with what I said, but I think it is, especially with 1954, which is like a 3.5-hour film. I mean, it's like each hour is its own act, and then it just transitions into the next so wonderfully. 2018, I'll just get into it. It had the part after, shit, what happens before? I can't remember what happens before, but it's the part where Jackson is, his friend finds him just laying out in the street, and he brings him inside, and they talk, and it goes on forever, and then he proposes to her, and it just, that is the part of the film I really don't like, because it just grinds straight into a halt. So it's really, I mean, whatever, I guess. I don't know. I'm not sure what I was going to say. Narrative structure. Both films rely heavily on the traditional three-act structure, but use it in different ways. I think the three-act structure is important to these films, especially because it dictates the rise and fall of the characters. I said that. This is such a character-driven story that a narrative structure is almost necessary. I think 1954 paces its characters much slower and almost pulls it like taffy. I really loved that analogy because it's so true that we really just don't get into like the meat of the characters until the second act, you know, like we know that's not even true actually. It really is. I mean, because in the 1934 version, Esther's like story was sort of all about like, you know, she was born in Mississippi in a small town or like some like place in the mountains, you know, and that was so integral to her character because here I am talking about a film I've never seen, but it was integral to her character because in 1934 it was so important. Holy shit, 12 minutes. It was so important for celebrities to have that background story, like so that we knew where they come from. But in 1954 that had all changed because well, I think the statistic is like about half of the people that were seeing movies in the previous decade had stopped seeing movies. So it had to be explosive and it had to be dynamic and it had to be interesting for people to go see it. And I mean, I think that 1954 does that really well. Great. Sound. Okay, so the sound is very important in both films, with each of them being musicals, which in 1954's case is interesting considering the original 1937 version was not. Obviously, there is no comparison to the magnitude of a Judy Garland performance, and the sound design needs to be good in order for that to translate on film. In both films, I would say the sound design is done very well, with it often sounding better than the dialogue. Both are crisp and clear, with them each using interesting techniques to melt together the songs and scene, which I think actually I will say about 2018 is done so much because there's a lot of music and there really isn't a whole lot of numbers in 1954, but in 2018 it's like bam bam bam. So I mean they do I think a really great job of taking the sound and then translating that into visuals that, you know, go on while the performance is happening. So that's just kind of the comparisons I made. I think I'm probably going to leave it at that and then just sort of discuss these individually because I don't want to go on too long. So overall, I think that when it comes to acting in 1954, I think, I mean, obviously Judy Garland acts the shit out of any role she's in. Like, that's bottom line. She's the best. James Mason, who I had never heard of before this, I think did an incredible job as Norman Maine because, like I said, it's a really difficult character, in my opinion, to get right. So there's so much nuance to that character that he really brings him alive. And I think even more so in 2018, you know, and I think in 1954 it was about Judy. In 2018 it was about Gaga. Then we saw the movie and then it was about Bradley Cooper, who I've never really been a fan of. I don't like my sister loves The Hangover and I'm like, it's cool, I guess. I don't know. It's not my thing. But I was really impressed with his performance because I just didn't know that he could act like such a visceral, real character. Like Norman Maine, Jackson in 2018 is such a tangible character. Like you can really feel his emotions, his thoughts, everything. It's unreal. I mean, it's really surreal to just watch it because it's like I know that person. You know what I mean? Like we've seen that actor, that singer, that songwriter on TV, that entertainer that is self-destructive and, you know, is like breaking down essentially as a person in the public eye. And I think he does a really, really great job of bringing that character to life. Yeah.